Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Santa Barbara Planning Commission meeting for October 14th, 2021. If I could ask my colleagues to please come online. We're going to prepare to begin our meeting today with a roll call. Good to see you all. Glad everybody is safe and well. And I know that Commissioner Reed is going to join us a little bit later this afternoon. Something came up unexpectedly for him, and just wait for Commissioner Lodge to join. We'll hope to not have any internet interruptions this afternoon. I had an interruption yesterday while I was on a call, so a meeting, we'll just see. Okay, Commissioner Lodge is with us. So we're going to go ahead and start. If we could please have Ms. Fennessy join us for our voice roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will now start the roll call. Chair Schwartz.
Here.
Vice Chair Escobedo.
Here.
Commissioner Bonderson.
Here.
Commissioner Higgins.
Here.
Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
And I understand Commissioner Reed will be arriving soon. And Commissioner Wiscombe.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. We'll go to preliminary matters and ask Ms. DeBus to join us. The first item is requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of X agenda items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have none.
Do we have any announcements or appeals?
Yes, Chair Schwartz, I would like to announce that the Planning Commission's meeting of October 21st has been canceled. So that's next week's meeting. And we will be holding a special Planning Commission meeting on October 28th, and that will start at the regular time of 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's go to a review, consideration, and action on the Planning Commission minutes and resolutions. And that's for September 16th, 2021. And then we also have a resolution associated with that hearing. Let's take a minute and pull up those documents. And are there any changes to the draft documents we have in our package? Commissioner Wiscombe, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify the motion. It's on page 8, motion by Wiscombe, seconded by Lodge. And under item number 1 there, it says add condition J11. It should be add condition to Roman numeral 2, capital letter D as in David, number 2, and then J11. So we know exactly where that addition went in the minutes.
Thank you. Very good, Commissioner Wiscombe. Appreciate that. Are there any other changes that we need to look at?
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Escobedo?
I think there's a correction that needs to be made. Well, actually, nope, sorry. I misread that. I confused this with another meeting.
I'll take a moment. Any other changes, colleagues, to these documents before we ask Ms. Fennessy to join us? And we'll just need a motion and a second for that. So I'll take a moment. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Commissioner Wiscombe?
I'll move as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have Wiscombe and Lodge. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Fennessy, would you rejoin us for a voice?
Thank you. I'll now start the roll call vote. Vice Chair Escobedo.
Yes.
Commissioner Bonderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
Commissioner Lodge.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiscombe.
Yes.
And Chair Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Fennessy. Thanks to one and all. Let's go ahead and move right along to any comments from members of the public who would like to speak to us on items not on our agenda today. Ms. DeBusk?
Thank you. For anyone who is attending via the webinar, if you would like to make a public comment on items not on today's agenda, please click the raise lower hand icon that is on the control panel, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. At this time, I'm not seeing any members of the public who have raised their hands. Ms. Fennessy, have we received any written general correspondence?
Thank you, Mr. Busk. We received 3 general public comments that were distributed to the commission prior to this meeting.
Thank you both. We can move right along now to our one and only item. It's a concept review for 35 Anacapa Street. And as we're asking the staff presenter, that'll be Ms. Kennedy, along with the applicant team to join us, I just want to recap and remind us and the public that this is indeed just a concept review. And as we have stated in our packet, I'm going to read this. No formal action on the development proposal will be taken at the concept review, nor will any determination be made regarding environmental review of the proposed project. So we are to provide staff and the applicant with feedback and direction regarding the proposed land use and design today. Okay, with that, Commissioner Higgins, you can go ahead and turn off your webcam. And we're going to go, I believe, to Ms. Kennedy. Are you up first, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Kathy Kennedy, project planner for this project. It is, like stated, the 35 Anacapa Street concept review hearing. Next slide, please. So the purpose of today's hearing is to allow the Planning Commission and the public an opportunity to review early on a potential project in the OC zone. The applicant has provided 2 options to be considered today, and no formal actions or any binding decisions will be made at this hearing. Next slide, please. So the project site is located at the corner of East Mason Street and Anacapa Street, as shown here. Next slide, please. And here's an aerial view of the project site. It is located south of the railroad tracks, north of Cabrillo Boulevard. It is currently a vacant lot on Anacapa, again on the corner of East Mason and Anacapa Street. Next slide, please. So first, I'd like to give you a little background on the OC zone. OC zone is the Ocean-Oriented Commercial Zone. It was established in 2004. The primary focus is to limit hotel and visitor serving uses and to encourage ocean-oriented commercial, recreational, and arts-related uses. Housing would only be allowed in the OC zone between the Highway 101 and the railroad tracks. So this site is not located in that area. And it would only allow small hotels, which are defined as hotels with 6 rooms or less, with a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. So you can see the OC zone in the turquoise color there, and then outline of the project site. The project site's located south of the railroad tracks, therefore housing is not allowed on this particular site. It is currently, again, a vacant lot. Next slide, please. So there are small hotel limitations in the OC zone. So no more than 6 guest rooms per hotel. Each room can be a maximum of 300 square feet and cannot have a kitchen, although a common kitchen area would be allowed. And if a manager's unit is requested, the maximum size is 600 square feet. Next slide, please. So the OC zone is very specific about the number of rooms, only 6 hotel rooms per each small hotel, but there's no minimum lot area for these developments. It's staff's interpretation that only 1 hotel would be allowed per lot, whether the lot is either very large or very small. However, these lots could be subdivided, so each lot that's subdivided could have its own small hotel. Next slide, please. Back in June, the applicant team submitted a planner consultation review, and that consists of just a planning staff person looking at the project. The project is not reviewed by any other departments. It's not routed for any other comments from anyone else, only planning. So at that time, planning staff was supportive of the general mix of uses as proposed, was supportive of the parking modification, gave comments that we would be supportive of a traditional lot split, splitting the lot into two and having one hotel on each lot, or just one hotel on the existing lot. We were not supportive of a lot split and lot tie option. That would be where the lot would be split and then tied back together through a lot tie agreement, and then two hotels on that development. Staff felt like these new subdivided lots would have to meet all requirements on each lot separately, and that a lot tie agreement really binds the parcels back together and it's considered one lot. So we weren't supportive of that option at that time. Next slide, please. So we talked with the applicant team and went over our comments, and there was a decision that to bring this project to the Planning Commission for comments. And the proposal is very similar to what we looked at previously. It's the same design and uses, but another option was presented, and the applicant prepared a letter explaining the two options and how they would look at each and how they would manage each. So there are two options proposed. Again, the lot split lot tie option, and then another one, the condominium map option. And the big question is there a path forward to allow two small hotels at this location? Next slide, please. So here's the project, sort of a bird's eye view of the proposal. So on the upper portion of the slide is the location of the hotel room. So there would be 12 hotel rooms across the back there. It's a 3-story building with restaurants and decks and art gallery and different types of restaurants, small restaurants, bars, and such throughout the development. There's a large staircase you can see right at the corner. And I'll show you more of the floor plans later, but this is the kind of overall view of the project. Next slide, please. So the top elevation here would be the elevation from Anacapa Street, and then the lower elevation would be the East Mason view. Next slide, please. So look at the first option, which is actually option number 2, but I wanted to look at this one first, the lot split, lot tie option. Like I said, staff is not that supportive of this. You'll see there's a lot line proposed. It's the blue line going through the property, kind of a zigzag. And so this would be a lot split and then tied back together with the lot tie agreement. There are uses that cross over this lot line, as you'll see in the next slides. This is the option, again, that staff is not that supportive of. You can go to the next slide, please. Again, this shows the lot line through the property. Next slide, please. And then the third. I'll go through the floor plans in more detail when we look at the condominium map. Next slide, please. So the question with this is, would this lot split, lot tie option meet the OC zone requirements that only one small hotel with no more than 6 guest rooms would be allowed? And does this hotel design adequately address the intent of the OC zone and the CUP findings? So the conditional use permit findings, I'll show you in a little bit. Next slide. So the other option is a condominium map. So in this case, there would be a number of condominium units. So the first floor would be one condominium unit, second floor, another. The hotel number 1 would be another unit, hotel number 2 would be another, and then there would be shared common areas. And this is more supportive from staff, although we would want to see the hotels, if this were to go forward, to be very distinct, have their own lobbies, their own areas, and very distinct 2 hotels. Whether they're operated by one company or not, and that's another question before you, we would like to see that they were very distinct, separate hotels. So this is the first floor. So you'll see that there's parking on the first floor. There's stacked spaces, a puzzle parking system proposed. It's 100% valet. There's also a restaurant down below, a corner market, and then the hotel lobby. Next slide, please. So for the second floor, there's a commercial area. There's a restaurant, tasting room, outdoor deck areas. That's certain area that's open up to above. Fast casual kitchens, artist studio and gallery. The manager's unit would be on the second floor, and all the back of house areas on the second floor as well. And next slide, please. So the third floor would contain the hotel rooms, so 12 hotel rooms, a bar, some other hotel amenities, the lounge, and then this large deck area that would open to below. Next slide, please. So the question here is, does this configuration, this way to propose the project with the condominium map, meet the OC zone requirements, and whether this adequately addresses the intent of the OC zone, and can the CUP findings be met? Next slide. So here are the findings. There are a number of them. I won't read them all, but just give you the gist of it is that looking at whether this would, and these are for the small hotel findings. They're standard CUP findings for any kind of conditional use permit, but these are specific for this zone, for this small hotel. So would it promote a vital mixed use neighborhood? Would it fit into the mixed use setting? Is it compatible? It may include a manager's unit. Is it detrimental to the public peace, health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of the neighborhood? Next slide. Other findings related to being, whether it's detrimental impact on the properties, is there adequate parking? Is it compatible with the area? So those are all the findings that would need to be made, along with many others. If this project were to go forward, and I didn't include them in the PowerPoint, but there would be tentative map findings, parking modification findings, development plan findings as well. Next slide, please. So there are a couple other questions that the applicant has asked. They'll probably go through this in a little bit more detail, but if there are 2 hotels that would be allowed, could they operate under a single management company? That's a question for you, whether you feel that that would be appropriate or not. Next slide. Then in regard to the parking, they did submit a shared parking demand study as part of your staff report. The conclusion is that the demand would be met with 85 parking spaces. That's a 48% reduction, so a reduction from 162 to 85. Transportation planning staff did review it, and based on the numbers that were proposed in the project, felt that they could be in support of this demand study. Just to remind you, we haven't looked at all the zoning requirement numbers for parking. We didn't do a full plan check on this project, but based on the numbers that were given to us from the applicant, they had stated that 162 would be required. So it's a 48% reduction. And the question to you today would be, is the modification supportable? Next slide, please. So a little summary of the questions. Basically, are you in support of this proposed design that includes 2 small hotels? If so, is the condominium map a good option to do this? Is the lot split, lot tie an appropriate option? Would you support a single management of 2 hotels? And would you support the parking modification? And that concludes staff's presentation. We also have Katie Momolsky from Transportation Planning here if you have any questions about the parking study. Thank you, Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Kennedy. Excellent. And we'll have Ms. Momolsky standing by for commissioner questions. Is there also an applicant presentation today?
There is.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay, well, good afternoon, Madam Chair Schwartz and fellow commissioners. My name is Troy White with TW Land Planning and Development. I'm pleased to be acting as agent for the owner, 35 Anacapa LLC, in support of this exciting and important spunk zone project. I want to thank staff for the great presentation and their hard work over the past several months. Next slide. As Kathy covered, the project would include a mix of commercial, including restaurants and artist spaces, and would support 2 small hotels with a total of 12 rooms. Each hotel would have 6 rooms. The hotel use would be supported by 1 manager's unit and a common lobby, lounge, and back of house service areas. The overall development would be parked at 85 spaces located within semi-automated lifts and supported by a full valet operation. Next slide. We are here today seeking input from this commission on the following questions. Is the commission comfortable with the project direction? Can 2 small hotels be developed on 1 lot with 1 operator? Is there a preference related to airspace condos versus a lot split lot tie? Can hotel common area and back of house uses be shared? And can the parking modification be supported? Next slide, please. In our presentation today, I'm joined by a dynamic and creative project team. We intend to discuss the project design goals, zoning consistency, and the parking modification request. I'd like now to turn over the presentation to our architect, Mark Kirkhart of DesignArc, to speak to the project design. Next slide.
Good afternoon, Chair Schwartz and members of the commission. My name is Mark Kirkhart, Principal DesignArc Architects, and we're really excited to be here today to present what we think is a fantastic addition to the funk zone. When we were first approached by the Timer Group, we were tasked with the following project objectives. 1, to create a central anchor for the funk zone and a gathering spot for locals and tourists alike. Also to provide multiple outlets where great food, good drinks, and amazing art can coexist and thrive. And incorporate a small and unique overnight accommodations befitting of the funk zone. And finally, to create a legacy project that will stand the test of time. So first and foremost, we really see this opportunity as one of placemaking. If there's anything that's missing in the funk zone, is kind of a real anchor. And so this gave us, we feel, the opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. One of the things throughout history, you can see all over the world, is actually where stairways become placemaking. Probably familiar with the Spanish Steps in Rome. Next slide, please. This is a project that is actually constructed in Culver City now. It's called the Steps at Culver City. And it's kind of an inspiration for what we were proposing here in the funk zone. So these kinds of, next slide, please. These kinds of spaces thrive all over the world, really. And referring to placemaking, the next slide, please. We're also very, very pleased with the placemaking that we did at the Santa Barbara County Bowl. Certainly one of our more memorable ones. So there's really 2 main reasons. Next slide, please. There's 2 main reasons to provide this dynamic staircase at the corner. One is that real placemaking, that real sense of a place. And we feel that this has the opportunity to become known as, hey, meet me at the steps. Everyone will know this. It'll be a real central location. But the second benefit for it is it really encourages visitors to explore the top of the stairs and actually take visitors up to the 2nd floor courtyard, which is the heart of our project. So you can see, next slide, please. So people can be sitting and lounging, but you also get visual connections up into the courtyard. Next slide, please. So as soon as you get to the top of the steps, you're actually able to look in and experience this. This is kind of the heart of the project, as staff has mentioned, where there's a lot of activity. And so that we really feel that the stair has kind of two real purposes. Number 1 is a placemaking, and second, to draw visitors to the 2nd floor. Next slide, please. Now we understand that we're not here today as a sort of a design hearing per se. We have not gone to the Architectural Board of Review yet, which we certainly will be doing. I just want to point out that this is a concept. It's not necessarily fully baked. Like I said, we haven't gone to the ABR yet, which we obviously will be doing and working with them to finalize our design project. But I'm not going to go through in detail We don't have really enough time, but just kind of to highlight the project. Go to the next slide, please. Kathy already kind of mentioned this. So the parking is a L-shaped parking garage that basically runs across the top and the left side of this diagram. Would be the west and the south. As was mentioned, this will be 100% valet 24/7. Also, we're proposing a bodega kind of market at the corner and a multi-storied restaurant with outdoor seating on Anacapa. Next slide, please. On this floor, as I said, kind of the heart of the project, we have some fast casual kitchens along the west, an art gallery, artist studios and residence, some commercial space on the upper floor of the restaurant, spilling out into this courtyard, as well as a tasting room on that faces Mason Street. Next slide, please. Top floor, the 12 hotel rooms, a common area located on the right, kind of off of Mason Street with also a deck. And then we have a bar with both public and amenity serving for hotel guests along the Anacapa Street frontage. One section here just to show, the next slide, please. This gives an indication of just one cross section. You can see the triple high stacked cars in the garage on the lower right-hand corner. We really only have two places where the peak of the roof gets to 48 or to 45 feet. So we are allowed kind of tall spaces on the ground floors and a very generous courtyard on the second floor. Next slide, please. This is the vantage point. What we think is really important about this, besides the gathering place and the placemaking of the stairs, is it really allowed us to push the massing back from the corner and not have kind of a traditional building that comes right to the corner. So it really, we feel the massing really steps back and allows for a nice public experience on the sidewalk. Next slide, please. Along Mason Street, you can see the entrance to the bodega there on the left-hand side, a small private lobby on the ground floor that goes up to the hotel. And we're thinking that this project, besides we're going to really want to exceed sustainability standards. We're looking into lots of alternative energy sources, but we even want to display the stormwater management. So the idea of here maybe having an above ground tank where we collect the rainwater and so it becomes a full educational opportunity. Last two slides. Next one, please. An aerial view here. Of course, this is, we think, the potential for the epicenter of the funk zone. We've got the Hotel Californian here off to the left, and you can see the massing of the size of our site, even compared to the Beacons building across the street and the other buildings in the area. We feel we're well within the kind of mass bulk and scale of the neighborhood. And next slide, please. This is one kind of photo simulation of a view of the corner with our project on the left. And you can see the Beacons building is actually 48 feet high, straight up from the sidewalk, where our building really terraces and steps back from the sidewalk and really expresses, we think, a very positive public corner. That's the end of my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Troy. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. As staff covered, the proposed development is located within the OC zone, which allows for a variety of commercial uses, including small hotels with approval of a CUP. Each small hotel CUP is allowed to be developed with 6 guest rooms. It should be noted that the coastal zoning ordinance does not state a minimum lot size or a prohibition on airspace condos relative to the small hotel CUP. We feel that the hotel use is an important core activity around which we can bring on other prospective tenants. We cannot, however, build or operate a financially feasible hotel project with just 6 units. Interestingly, as the staff report points out, there's not a single 6-unit, quote unquote, small hotel in the entire city of Santa Barbara. Next slide. We found the 6-unit hotel limitation interesting. As staff covered, the small hotel use was first introduced in 2004. Based on our review of staff reports, resolutions, and meeting minutes, the Planning Commission determined in 2004 the following: that several small hotels rather than one large hotel should be permissible below the railroad tracks. Entrada de Santa Barbara, as you may recall, was considered a large hotel at the time. The Planning Commission also determined that parking requirements should be reduced and consolidated, that visitor serving uses south of the track should be allowed, and that a diversity of uses should be encouraged rather than restricted. Next slide. So exactly how did we end up with the 6-unit small hotel CUP? After briefly reviewing city records, this is our conclusion. It appears the 6-room small hotel limit was introduced by staff at the Planning Commission lunch meeting immediately prior to the council's decision to adopt the OC zone district. I was unable to find any study or data as to how the 6-unit number was arrived at. What we do know is that the Planning Commission wanted to see a diversity of commercial uses as well as small hotels in the OC zone, but lacked the time to deliberate at length on the issue. The main point for us to consider is what was the goal and the intent behind the small hotel CUP requirement. That is to avoid large hotels in the funk zone. Absent guidance within the zoning ordinance as to how small hotel CUPs are to be administered, we believe this allows the Planning Commission the flexibility to determine where small hotels would be appropriate relative to a specific project's lot size and location. Next slide. We believe, consistent with staff's review, that the Planning Commission can approve 2 small hotel CUPs on a single lot. We believe our half-acre lot size lends itself to the development of a commercial project with 2 small CUPs, which are complementary but subordinate to the other proposed uses. Within our letter, we offered 2 different options, a condo option and a lot split, lot tie agreement. For sake of simplicity, like city staff, we are partial to the airspace condo option. While we have developed concept floor plans that show that the 2 hotels can be technically operated with 2 operators, it is the intent of the applicant that the 2 hotel projects be managed by 1 operator, which, given the small number of units, creates greater management efficiencies and allows the proposed 12 visitor serving accommodations to be financially feasible. So, next slide. With respect to the small hotels, therefore, we are asking for the Commission's input on the following. Confirm that 2 small hotel CUPs are permissible. Confirm that 1 hotel operator is okay. Confirm that the hotel lobby, lounge, stairs, elevators, parkings, etc., and other back of house uses can be shared common use amenities. And finally, advise of your preference, if any, on a condo map versus a lot split, lot tie. Next slide, please. One final note, we believe that as part of the Planning Commission's deliberations, for any such project requesting more than 1 small hotel UCP, the Planning Commission should weigh the proposed mix of commercial uses in light of the proposed number of units and whether the development honors the intent of the original direction to avoid large hotels. In this case, we feel like we have the right balance of commercial and visitor serving accommodations, which should be supported. I'd like now to turn the presentation over to Scott Shell of ATE to discuss the proposed parking modification. Next slide.
Mr. Shell, I also want to draw your attention to the clock, and there'll be plenty of time for questions as we get down to your remainder time.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair Schwartz and Commissioners. I think I'll just do a quick close and then we can let Scott answer any of your more detailed questions, if that's all right with you all. Okay, great. Thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Jeff Timer, one of the developers and president of the Timer Group. I'll keep my comments brief. While we're still early in the formal planning process, we've been actually working on this design for well over a year. So thank you to Design Arc, Troy White, and ATE for all their hard work getting us to this point. Thanks to city staff as well for preparing a very thorough report and also shepherding us through this process and suggesting that we come speak with you today. When we first acquired the 35 Anacapa property, we knew its location within the heart of the funk zone was deserving of thoughtful design, but also something bold. I was raised and have lived in Santa Barbara all my life, on and off for actually the last 30 years. Jack Timer, my father, who is also a partner on this project, has been involved in numerous projects like Innisbrook and Montecito, Las Entradas and Montecito. We're also working on the historic ranch in Goleta, I should say, residential. We're also working together on a project in Goleta right now for residential and also a hotel in the Carpinteria area. So I think we all know that the Funk Zone has gone through a ton of change over the last 10 years. I've been involved with some of the nonprofit art and music organizations that I think are vital to keeping the community healthy and thriving down there. Jack actually lived a block away from the project site, ironically or not ironically. So we really know the area and in particular the importance of this property. Looks like I'm about to run out of time, so I guess I will finish later.
Thank you. Thank you, applicant team. Okay, very good. With that, I'm going to ask the applicant team to turn off your webcams and audio. We're going to ask the commissioners to come back and ask Mr. Busk if we have any members of the public who would like to speak to us on this item today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For members of the public that would like to make a comment on this item, please click the raise lower hand icon that's on the control panel. A red arrow pointed down indicates that your hand is raised. I will notify you when it's your turn to speak, and each speaker will have 2 minutes. At this time, I'm not seeing any raised hands. I will give it just a minute. And in the meantime, I'd like to let the public know that if you would like to be added as an interested party to this project, you can submit a request to PC Secretary at santabarbaraca.gov. Or you can also call us or submit a request via the mail. All this information is also available on the Planning Commission agenda. So we still do not have any members of the public that would like to make a comment on this item. Ms. Fennessy, have we received any written correspondence?
Thank you, Mr. Busk. We received 4 public comments for this item that was distributed to the commission prior to this meeting.
Very good. Thank you both. So it's now back to the commission to start our questions of staff and or the applicant team. Would anyone like to kick off the question period? Go ahead, Commissioner Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a lot of questions. Ms. Kennedy said in her presentation that hotels should be distinct, that staff believes that the small hotels should be distinct physically. And I'm wondering, I'm not a planner, so I don't know if this is even possible, but this is a question for the applicant or perhaps, Mr. White or Mr. Kirkhart. Have you explored a lot split with 2 distinct hotels that involves permanent easements for access and parking, et cetera?
I think we'll let Troy White, you want to take that one?
Yes, happy to answer that. So really the core requirement of this project, or at least the vision, was to have an immense amount of public open space. So you see that in terms of our stairs. You see that in terms of all the areas for people to explore in that large atrium volume space there. And so if we were to try to segment the project into separate buildings, even with permanent easements, we start to lose this amazing public experience that we're trying to create. So of course this half-acre lot could be divided into probably 3-4 lots, and we could have 36 or some larger amount of hotel spaces. But really the goal was to make this an amazing public experience, and so by having one building, we're able to accomplish that. I hope that addresses your question.
Okay, yes, that answers my question. Thank you for that. And then I wanted to ask about let's see, I wanted to ask about what measures does the project, what measures are the project, will the project employ for environmental sustainability? And also the same question for sea level rise, because we did get comments from we got a letter from Heal the Ocean on sea level rise. So could one of the project team address that, please?
I can address that. Oops, sorry.
You're muted, Mark.
Oh, I'm not muted. Okay. Yeah, we've been given very strong marching orders from the Timer Group to really make this project a demonstration of how to develop in this day and age. So we're investigating, well, first of all, we're doing a lot of solar photovoltaic solar collectors, as well as we're investigating geothermal for the heat exchange for heating and cooling. As I mentioned, we want to have the stormwater program be expressed such that it could become kind of an educational experience. So, you know, our plan when we get to that along developing it this far, much further along, is to really have this be a demonstration project for sustainability. And we think that that's going to be really important for basically for the legacy of this project.
Okay.
And I'm happy to address the sea level question as well.
That would be great. I assume you've seen Heal the Ocean's letter.
We have.
Great.
And of course, you know, this is a concept hearing, and so we don't expect to address every issue, but I did study that letter, and I am familiar with the Planning Commission and City Council's work relative to their sea level rise adaptation plan, which was recently approved this year. That plan, of course, has been forwarded to the California Coastal Commission for further comment as part of the LLCP amendment, or will be soon. I'm in contact with staff to find out the exact status. Of course, based on my experience and DesignArc's experience on the Hotel Californian, we'll design to whatever standards that are in place relative to flood control. In the case of the Hotel Californian, which is also in the floodplain, you design to either elevate the structure and or provide for a certain level of floodgates that would be installed in the event of a flood. So it's something that we're mindful of. We're aware of the sea level rise adaptation plan, and we're prepared to work with staff now and in the future in order to address this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. Okay. And then I just wanted to ask a question on the fast casual kitchen. Can someone tell me what that concept is? What does that mean?
I think Mark, you can get into the details of why we did it, but I think one of the ideas when we're trying to figure out how to create a hub or a place that people would gather and go to, especially when you're on a second floor, that the fast casual and kind of that community atmosphere that it offers with, you know, small coffee, grab and go pizza, or think tacos, think anything that you would see like you know, even the public market would be a good example. Our location offers, we thought, a great place where we are going to have a lot of foot traffic throughout the day and evening, and it might be a perfect place to have a smaller version of that kind of public market experience where new entrepreneurs can try out small restaurant ideas.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation. Like, you know, you might even have one of them just might be an oyster bar, or just we can go up and buy oysters. Another one might be a small a little ice cream place, or another one might be a small wood-fired pizza or something. There's basically, it's just a kitchen. There is no place that you're basically would be sitting out in this courtyard to dine. You wouldn't, there's no place to sit down. It's strictly a kitchen.
And I'd like to close real quickly on that. And the Coastal Commission, of course, asked us to provide for a diversity of even dining experiences. And so we don't want this to be a 100% fine dining experience. So, of course, the fast casual allows for those who are of more moderate incomes to enjoy the space and feel very comfortable there.
Okay, that's fine. The only reason I asked that question is because in the 2004 ordinance, fast food restaurants were crossed off. So when I saw the word fast, that was as not being allowed in the HRC2 zone when they developed the OC ordinance. So that's why I wanted to know what the word fast was. Just
This will not be.
The concept sounds great. It's not going to be a McDonald's or
No, and we actually honestly want to work with local restaurateurs. We've already been talking with a few who might have want a satellite version of what they're doing, and I think the key will be the curation and making sure that the space is designed so that they can use it and make money on it, obviously, and also so it's affordable enough for them and provides that kind of atmosphere that we were looking for. So.
Okay. And then my final question is, in the artist studio, it's a pretty large space. It's not a live work space. Is that correct? It's basically just a working space.
It is not. It's
okay.
And again, this is conceptual. We know we want to include some sort of gallery, artist studio. How that interior, obviously breaks down will come in the planning process. And with obviously Design Arc and our teams, ARB and all of those influences.
But the idea, Commissioner, would be that there would be actually artists working in there, like artists in residence, not living there, but actually maybe a studio, like a leather worker or someone that you could actually go in there and talk to them, and they could sell their wares there as well. And there's enough room in there to have like 2 or 3 different. And they might even be rotating. We're just kind of in the process of developing this, but
right.
The client and we are very, very dedicated to the idea of bringing art into this project, into the funk zone for it. So I think it's something pretty unique, but we feel it would be a great way to support the arts.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all for your answers to my questions, and that completes my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiscombe. Which of my colleagues would like to go next with questions? We can always come back for a second round. So no need to try to get all your questions in first. Commissioner Higgins.
Commissioner Higgins, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? You can stay on, Allison, then maybe this is for you. We're just kind of, and we talked about at the site visit, the intent of the 6-unit limitation or the origin. I guess the simple question is, do you think that there's any chance that the number 6 was arrived at as a way to prevent hotels from being applied for or approved, just from a market condition? Is that the intent of that number? Sometimes we have development standards that are intentional. So do you think that was the intent?
Chair Higgins, I do not think that was the intent because it was something that was added. It wasn't there with the original ordinance. And so I don't think they would have added it intentionally at a number that they thought would not work financially. Okay. I do think the intent was to be more like our hotels, in the what was the R4 zone, more of a bed and breakfast, I think that was the concept. So I don't think it was intentional in order to prevent them.
Is it bed and breakfast a distinct use?
It's not. That's just just to give you more of a visual. We don't have a definition.
Okay, so there wasn't there could have been, I guess at the time, it stipulated it would have been, or bed and breakfast would be the only thing they would allow, right? But they didn't say that.
Commissioner Higgins, correct. They did not state that.
Okay, that's my question. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Very quick, Commissioner Higgins. Colleagues, more questions? You're throwing me off and not having many questions for this sizable project in an important area of our community. Commissioner Bonderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might need to come back again after a while with some follow-up questions because I'm still sort of thinking things through. But I do have a couple minor questions that at least I can start with, and we'll manage to fill the silence. So I wanted to first just comment. At first glance, I love this project. Of course, that is if I'm not looking at ordinances and coastal commissions and analyzing with a fine-tooth comb. If I'm just looking at it from a design point of view, I absolutely love it. And so I'm really excited to see how something like this will work in this location. I wanted to specifically talk about parking. I know that you are requesting reduced parking, and there's a lot of statistics and numbers in our staff report. I don't need to repeat them here, but I was interested in understanding if someone can go ahead and throw on the map of this area, where would the spillover parking be routed to? Now, I'm familiar with this area personally, but I would like to know where you all believe people can park long-term if they'd like to come and spend time on this site and there's no parking available if for any reason parking is full. What is the walking distance? What are we thinking will be the backup plan for parking?
This is Scott Show with Associated Transportation Engineers. So I'll take that one. I mean, we can see on the aerial that the closest parking lot is the one at Garden and Cabrillo. I don't know the specific distance. You know, the city blocks down there are about 500 feet long, so you can sort of get a gauge for that. So I'd say it looks like it's about 400 to 500 feet from the lot over to the site.
Do we have an arrow that we can kind of, for anybody who's watching might be interested, where that location will be here? Or can you describe it perhaps to help us out?
Yeah, the parking lot there's actually two parking lots. There's one on the ocean, which is just above where it says SantaBarbaraCal.gov. That's the Garden Street lot by the skate park that's on the ocean side of Cabrillo. And then just across the street from that is what we call the Garden Street lot. So, and then of course we can see the project site, which is outlined in orange. So it gives you a sort of triangle view of where you could park. Now, I want to just reiterate again, I didn't get to do my presentation because my computer crashed and we ran out of time, so that's okay. But, our parking analysis, which utilized, the Funk Zone parking study data that you all saw when you approved 11 Anacapa Street, showed that we anticipate the parking is going to meet the peak demands for the site on both weekdays and weekends. So I got to slip my presentation in a little bit.
I set you up for that. Go ahead and tell.
Softball. Okay.
Commissioner Bonderson, if I could just jump in, it looks like the walking distance to either of those public parking lots is about 750 feet.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Busk. I appreciate you throwing that in there. I think it's important for us all to know.
And one other point, there are immediately across the street in one of the old bungalows, the tenant or the owner there actually installed a pedestrian pass-through that connects directly to the lot. So as opposed to having to go all the way around the block, you can actually go right through their parking lot, down their drive aisle, and connect immediately to our project from that Garden Street lot.
And you shouldn't forget that there's also public parking at the Hotel Californian, which is just right off of Helena Avenue, which is even shorter distance. And probably Scott could elaborate on the numbers you came up with in terms of the people that are using alternative transportation to get to the Funk Zone in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, gentlemen. I actually was thinking about that Hotel California one myself. That was the one I was alluding to, but we got a lot more parking lots right within walking distance. So that's really a great answer. And I think that's really important because it's important to kind of understand the combination of options here. And as we start to reduce parking in different upcoming projects, everyone's going to be depending on the public parking lots. My next question has to do with, so there's two options here that we've been provided in the staff report for the small hotels. And I was curious to know at this point, are you as a team leaning in one direction or another? Which one would you prefer for us to be thinking about to be able to provide the best comments possible for you?
Is this a trick question?
It's
No,
not.
Troy, I think Troy can answer that one. Yes, but yeah, we do have a preference.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the initial concept that we explored with staff was a lot split. At that point, the lot tie hadn't quite been fully baked. And then in further really talking about it and thinking about it, the condominium option, I think is the most elegant solution. And so really that's our strongest preference. It makes a lot of sense, and we really appreciate staff's support of that use as well. So that's our option, our preference as well.
Yeah, and I think I'd also say that, it was interesting reading, our team was talking about the hotels and small hotel versus what's a mid-sized hotel or a boutique. And we were also talking about, well, how hotels have changed over the years. The idea of the hotel, right? Where we have the short-term rental stuff, but also just I've been to a number of even Marriott's doing this where you have a cell phone and check into the hotel. You don't even talk to anyone. You can check in, check out, you don't talk to a person. So that's kind of the idea too of when we were trying to think about how this could be used. So we're excited about the possibilities.
And so just to be clear, the lot tie agreement one is option 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to invite staff on here. I don't know which staff member would be the best to ask, but I would like to discuss option 2 from the staff point of view. Hi, Ms. Kennedy. How are you? I would like to talk about the statements on page 8 of 145. That's item page 8 under the bold subtitle of option 2. I'd just like to know if there has been any update to these statements. I'm looking at specifically the second paragraph under option 2, last sentence. It says, therefore, staff does not support this option. That whole paragraph, specifically where it says, if the property is subdivided, any development on a newly subdivided lot must meet all requirements of its own lot. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but the statement in general seems to not be supported by staff. Is that still the case? And if so, can you share more about staff's perspective on this?
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioner Bunderson, excuse me. Yes, this is still our conceptual opinion about this. Yeah, it was similar to what the planner consultation letter, and we look at it the same way. We look at a lot split as you're creating 2 separate lots, and then you would do 2 separate developments on each lot, meeting all the requirements on each specific lot. So our comments remain the same for this option, yes.
Thank you. And if they do decide to handle their project in this fashion, are they allowed to have shared amenities that, the properties maybe butt up against each other and walk through one another and potentially share parking lot space or other types of obvious shared amenities? Are they allowed to do that, and to what extent?
I'm actually not sure that they would even be allowed to do this option. We haven't looked into it from a legal standpoint exactly. We're not supportive of it. It appears that maybe it would not be really consistent with the Subdivision Map Act. So there are issues with this one in particular, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to keep you on for a second because I'm not sure the best way to ask this next question. But if the applicant is most interested in this option, what can we do from a planning commission standpoint to keep this in the running? What would you need from us to consider this at all, if anything?
Well, it's my understanding this is option 2 is their least favorite. So they're more in support of option 1, the condominium map option, and that's the one that staff supports. But are you asking if it were the opposite, if what would we be able to do?
Good. May I go back to the applicant team? Did I misunderstand that option 2 is the more favorable one?
Yeah, option 1 is our preferred, or is our preference. We could make either work, I think is what we could design around, you know, with arguments obviously about the legal ramifications, but our preference is option 1.
Please accept my apologies. I misunderstood, and that's why I was taking this route. Ms. Ostringer left us because it's not necessary any longer. Thank you. And so let me move on to I think I have one more question at this moment. It was with regard to something the applicant mentioned a few moments ago with regard to kind of most modified practices, most current practices. And I can't remember which one of you it was, excuse me, but you mentioned something about solar design and other types of really modern like efficiency design. Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of those plans? What is in your vision?
Mark?
So the idea, as I said, we were charged with by the Timers group to, as we move further into the process, to really have this project become a real demonstration project and exceed even Cal Green standards. Maybe work as close as we can to net zero on our electric consumption on site. We're looking at the possibility of doing the mechanical systems that would actually be tied into, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. Drilling. No, I'm talking about the mechanical, sorry. Geothermal, where you don't have to have big mechanical equipment sitting up on top of your roofs. The stacked parking, of course, is a newish technology. We're finally seeing some of that come into effect here in Santa Barbara. So, you know, trellises could be covered with solar collectors. Just really pretty much, you know, everything you can imagine is up for discussion.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I'll just add to our discussion is obviously we're very conceptual, but I'm and my father before me, right? We're both huge advocates for and understand that what lies ahead, unfortunately. And I have a son, and we don't want to do things how everyone else does it, even if it costs a little more. I mean, if you look at the design of this project, we're not trying to do a cookie cutter. Let's try to make this the most square footage to get the most money out of it. We really do want this and understand the importance of it as an iconic project and a landmark for Santa Barbara that's going to hopefully seamlessly fit into the neighborhood. So with that, what's the most, you know, Santa Barbara is the birthplace of Earth Day, you know, so we're very aware, and we actually will most likely work with both the Community Environmental Council or others who are interested on some of those sustainable approaches. There's luckily now on a state level, even there's a lot of information, a lot of new technology that we can try to employ. But until we, you know, solidify our plan, right, and figure out, okay, what are we working with? It's going to be difficult to say, but we're very interested. And we think it'll be a net positive financially at the end of the day.
I feel like it will be as well. And I'm really pleased to hear your perspective. It tells a lot about who you are as an individual. And I think it's going to be really amazing to see how you pull that off. So looking forward to that. I want to ask one more question. It's a terminology question, and you'll have to forgive me if it's a very obvious answer. But airspace condominium, could you please just explain for me what does that mean? And since we have this drawing up, can you maybe describe maybe how that fits into your plans? What does airspace condominium mean?
Commissioner Bonnerson, I'm happy to address that question. So if you've ever lived in a condominium building or an apartment building, you know, they're very very similar. Basically, an airspace means that you're subdividing not the land that's underneath it, but you're subdividing the airspace that sits on top of a piece of land. So the land is collectively shared amongst all the owners, and then you're able to segment different pieces of the airspace and or the building into distinct ownership units. And the beauty of, this is why we like this preferentially as opposed to the lot split lot size, is that, you have the ability to designate parking garages and elevators and staircases and other back of house closets for the janitor. These are all things that can be designated as common amenities shared amongst the ownership through what's called the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs. And so it's just allows for us to implement the vision, but have some organization and structure to it for our own uses, but also most importantly, in order to adhere and comply to the city's coastal zoning ordinance.
And I would just add too, Ms. Moderson, that those condominiums, quote unquote, the airspace condominiums could be sold individually to different people. So you would have one owner could own the 6 unit hotel, and another completely different owner own the second 6 units, and someone owns, say, the area that's the restaurant, so that it could be divided in any number of ways, so that even the individual people that have the businesses within there could have the opportunity to own their own quote unquote condominium. So it does provide a lot of flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkhart. I appreciate you expanding on that. I found that in the staff report, and it was quite clear, and I thought that to be a very positive aspect of this design approach. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I may come back again, Chair Schwartz, but that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonderson. Additional questions for staff and the applicant? Vice Chair Escobedo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I only have a few questions, but I'd like to ask my first two to Ms. Kennedy, if possible. Hello, Ms. Kennedy. So for the 6 unit limit, is that a number that we just settled on, or is that did we pull that from maybe somewhere else that's a standard in California or United States or somewhere else?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Escobedo, the 6 number of units for the small hotel. So it appears that was brought up either by staff or planning commissioners and decided upon at a planning commission lunch meeting. So I don't know that it was from some other ordinance. I'm not aware of that. It just seemed like probably a number that the small hotel, but we don't know any more than that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then can you give me a little bit of perspective from the staff perspective about practically why is staff supportive of 2 distinct hotel lobbies versus a shared?
So it's our opinion that the intention of the OC zone to have these small hotels is that they are separate. It doesn't say 12-room hotels. So to really be in compliance with that requirement, that specific number, that we feel that it should be obvious that that's what it is. It's not a 12-room hotel. It is a small hotel that meets the ordinance requirements. So I think there are ways to do that. One way is to have separate hotel lobbies, separate entrances, distinctual amenities perhaps, but just so that there's a understanding that they are 2 separate. And of course, with the condominium map, they could be sold separately, and that's important.
Thank you for that. And then last question for you is just conceptually, do you have any concerns about, it looks like the mechanical parking goes subterranean. Do you have any concerns? Was that discussed amongst staff?
In terms of
This area?
groundwater?
Yeah. or just this area is in the flood zone, or it's projected to be based on some of the sea level rise maps, and I just was curious about that.
So this was submitted as a planner consultation, just wanted to remind you, which is just a really quick review by planning staff. It has not been routed to any other divisions. We haven't done any environmental review. We haven't spent any time doing environmental review, looking up anything. So we really stepped back, and it's very conceptual. So all the things that we normally would have looked at by the time you see something has not been done in this case. So we're just looking at the big picture. How could this move forward in terms of what option? So have not put any time into that. Of course, things seem to be, obvious that we have to look into when the time comes, but we have not looked into that.
Okay, fair enough. That's my last question for you. And then my question for the applicant team is related to Ms. Kennedy's comments on the rationale behind distinct hotel lobbies for each hotel. And I guess my question to you is, how will these two hotels be distinct, right? So are they going to be identical in design? As a patron, if I'm coming in and I'm renting a hotel room in one versus the other, am I going to know that they are two distinct hotels? Because I think if they're identical in design and management, aren't we talking about a 12-unit hotel?
Troy, I don't know if you want to get into the weeds on how that could work. I think we feel that the 12 is a small hotel, and so I think at the fundamental level, and we feel like there's ways that we could definitely do two distinct entrances. We could do two distinct lobbies. We don't, and that kind of gets what I was saying prior, Commissioner, is that hotels these days aren't the same, right? So if you don't necessarily need a lobby, and it might be less use actually, and less burdensome on the whole project overall. That said, we can design around that, and we could design two elevators with two lobbies, and it would just doesn't seem to make sense. And I think that's why we're before you to say, hey, what was the intent behind 6 hotel rooms? We've in our thanks to staff actually, and we've researched and kind of found that it was kind of a arbitrary in our opinion. And we think 6 rooms for each hotel would be inefficient. And so that's why we're trying to figure out a way with your blessing to work with staff and move forward with this airspace with shared amenities.
Yeah.
The other thing,
I
wanted to add one quick thing, is that it's very important also to recognize that we are adhering to the 300 square foot limitation of the hotel rooms, which are very small hotel rooms, which will also tend to make these less expensive and more affordable. And I think Jack Timer put it best when we were first talking about this, is that, by the way, this is a 22,000 square foot piece of property. Is one of the few parcels this large down in the Fawn Zone. And if you had a 5,000 square foot parcel, you could put a 6-unit hotel on it. And here we have a 22,000 square foot parcel that we can only put 6 hotel rooms on without this kind of ownership arrangement. So it seems to us well in the spirit of the small hotel. I mean, a 12-unit hotel, two 6-unit hotels is not a large hotel by any stretch. And I don't think anyone would imagine a 12-unit hotel being large. So we are adhering to the overall square footage as well, the maximum square footage of the units themselves.
And if I may add to that, ultimately, like a condominium building, sometimes you'll have a shared clubhouse, or you'll have a shared office space, that you can serve the both function. If you've got 300 condo units for a large complex, those singular management functions can be distributed amongst those different uses. And so we're of the belief that ultimately the zoning ordinance does not require separate entrances. It does not require separate lobbies. Really what it does demand is that you can buy and sell and have, this is a separate 6-unit hotel, and this is a separate 6-unit hotel. And ultimately, in terms, there's no requirement to have 2 janitor's closets. There's no requirement to have 2 elevators, 2 sets of staircases. You know, all that repetition really, we feel isn't warranted by our interpretation of the zoning ordinance. And so that's, and part of the direction we're seeking today is that we're of the belief that there can be shared amenities between the 2 hotel CUPs.
And I appreciate you all sharing that. And I would agree. I'm trying to get to the place where I can justify saying that these are 2. I know it's arbitrary, I really do. And I'm not arguing that 12-unit hotel room or hotel is large by any means. But is it possible to have a shared hotel lobby? Because I think that's a good idea. It's an efficient use of the space. But design-wise, somehow give the impression that there are 2 separate hotels operating, whether that's 2 different elevators. So if I'm going to Hotel 1, I only use the elevator to the right. If I'm going to Hotel 2, I'm using the elevator to the left. Is there something like that that would be give a patron the impression that they are 2 distinct hotels?
I think I can even answer that, Troy, but please feel free to chime in. I think the answer is yes, we can design around that. However, we think it takes away from other parts of the project. I mean, not only is it wildly expensive to as you probably know, to put in extra elevators that may or may not be needed, but it's also kind of, but it can happen. So I think that's the short answer.
I would add also, we could change, you know, this is what's shown on the screen now is a floor plan that we had proposed for one of the units, 300 square feet. But, you know, Jeff, we can certainly, as you say, we could design into it. Maybe there's an alternate floor plan and an alternate architectural character of 6 of the units so that they look different, so that all 12 of them don't look the same. This would be an architectural idea, which I think we could also do. So that even when you got to the top of the one elevator and you're standing there, you see 6 units that look one way and another 6 units that look a different way. It would further express the fact that there's 2 different things going on. So I think to answer your question, I think there is a way we can use design to our benefit to kind of help further express the idea that they're 2 separate things.
And that's a good point, Mark. And I think also we could do it with, you know, it's Jets and Sharks, West Side Story. You know, you can name things, you can get creative with color, if you will, you know, and say, you know, this is, you know, the perch east or west or north, south, whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to achieve that. We can certainly look into that as we're further developing the design.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I think practically for me, I don't think it really, I think it is arbitrary and I don't think it matters. But when you come back, if this is the project that you're going to move forward with, give me a way to say yes, right? To the,
Okay.
to the 6-unit, 2 separate hotels. And I think that I could definitely be supportive of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Vice Chair Escobedo? No, not at this time. Other questions for staff and or the applicant team? Commissioner Higgins.
Sorry, one more for staff. So what we're talking about here is there's no minimum lot size. And so if you follow the logic really to the end, you could have more than 12 hotel units here. You could cut it up into 8 different airspace slots, and each of those airspace slots could have 6. Is it the same logic that we're using here?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Higgins. So there could be a lot split and numerous lot splits to allow small hotels. And then theoretically, you could do the same with condominium map. You could perhaps do that as well. We haven't looked into that, but that hypothetically, maybe it could be an option.
My impression here is that the number of 12 was sort of, the origin of 12 was out of the lot split, lot tie, 6 each. Now there's 12. You guys didn't really think the lot split, lot tie was as appropriate as another map act. But we still are working with 6 and 6 for 12, just in a condo map format. Is that pretty accurate?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll wait a moment or so and see if there are other questions from my colleagues. I'll go ahead and start my questions then, and we'll see if any other commissioners want to come on. I'd like to first ask perhaps Ms. Kennedy to come back. I don't know if this was discussed at all. In that there's a constraint in the current OC zone language regarding where residential development can be located, right, between 101 and the railroad tracks. Is there a way to define live, work, artist tenancy as all commercial while allowing an artist to reside in the unit? I know other cities do this where they have a significant strategic interest in flexing their zoning in order to lean towards commercial, but allowing residential to incent thriving art or art-focused neighborhoods. Do we have anything like that that would allow us to flex what we're doing?
Madam Chair, I hadn't thought about that. I don't think it would be allowed here. I think because it was specifically stated not to allow housing, but I think any kind of flexibility that maybe would have been allowed elsewhere probably would not be allowed here. That would be my first guess. I don't know if Allison has anything to add to that, but I'm not sure that that would be something allowed.
Chair Schwartz and commissioners, I would agree with Ms. Kennedy. Our coastal zones are more specific in terms of allowed uses, whereas inland, our zoning is more of a pyramid zoning where residential is allowed in almost every zone. However, in the coastal zone, that is not the case because they have a different hierarchy of uses that the Coastal Commission wants to see.
Right. Okay, just thought I'd try to press that for a moment. Let's see. Then to the applicant team, and this is in no particular order, Mr. Kirkhart, you started to describe some of the sustainability design elements that you're looking at. And I think I heard conceptual proposal that some of them be located even on the outside, exterior of the development that would showcase, educate, create more embracing of sustainability design if we can see it, love it, appreciate it. So tell me more about that. I'm very interested in that as a part of your overall design.
Just using this image that's up right now, for example, the trellises that are extending both to the south and to the north of this, the kind of the central piece of architecture there, we could use, there's beautiful translucent solar collectors now, photovoltaics, that we could install on that entire surface that you can see from underneath, and they provide shade. They're available in different colors even. So that's the kind of thing that we would be introducing, you know, when we finally come back. So besides just your solar collectors up on the roof, which we would do, which are kind of hard to see, I think using them on top of those trellises, for example, would be a great way to kind of display it. We could even have, you know, we're working on the Montecito YMCA where we're doing some similar things where we're actually going to trying to have little placards that describe what you're looking at. So if you're up there, you know, at the bar and you're looking up and you see something going on up on the ceiling, you can maybe it's even mentioned on the menu or something. What you're looking at up there is, you know, this X number of kilowatt hours of solar or energy is being you know, created by those solar collectors that are shading you. You know, so it's that kind of an approach. And I think if we could do the geothermal, which we're really hopeful, that's a fantastic. It's a much larger initial expense, but over the long run, it becomes very economical and it has a fairly long payback. But it's certainly another great way. You don't have to have big air handlers up on the roof. You know, it can be much more minimized in terms of those kind of intrusions to the architecture. The whole backside of the hotel rooms, you can see we began to show solar collectors across the top there. Those could be expanded to take on the entire roof. Like I say, as we develop this, we've got consultants that we work with, and you know the target of the ownership is to really be, like I said, far more than minimal. And if we can express it along with the stormwater management and the other things, I think it's could be a great opportunity to take what these owners are passionate about and really make it the forefront of this project.
Now, you've mentioned artistic design, and I'm wondering if you, again, even though at this very early concept stage, have some ideas about how to incorporate not just allowing for artist tenancy or art galleries, for example, but actually art in an art-like experience or experiences, plural, incorporated into the physical structures, and lighting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had earlier there in some of the earlier iterations of this, we had opportunities for large murals where we could actually get some of the local artists to you know, paint murals on the side of the building, which are becoming very popular down in the funk zones. So yes, we're absolutely intend to do that as well. Jeff, you know, you've been very connected to the arts community. Maybe you can you can expand on this.
I think we didn't want to put it in our conceptual drawings, obviously, but you know, our early, I think if we had the opportunity to kind of move around our 3D rendering, there's numerous places that are ideal for whether it's a public mural or public art, like in the plaza. We think that one of the more interesting things is I was actually one of the co-founders with Ginny Brush, Lover, of Pianos on State with Phil Gilly and Notes for Notes. I worked with that and made a music festival around that. And it still exists today. And one of the things that we loved about Pianos on State, which I still do, we're enjoying it right now, is that whenever you have art, in my opinion, as integrated into a project or just in public, it makes people who don't normally talk. And so that's one of the things that I love about Pianos on State. I think that's an opportunity we have here. And if you design with that in mind, I think you can get a lot more creative than what we were doing, which was, oh shoot, let's get the city to let us put in nail in something on the street. You know what I mean? And it was, so I feel like if we, as we get further along in the design process, that'll be an opportunity. And, you know, as far as the environmental and sustainable, like kind of building practices as well, I think there's opportunity for art and sustainability demonstrations. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kirkhart used the term placemaking, which is very stimulating to me to just sort of ponder all of the potential, if cost-effective opportunities with this development. And I'm looking at, I think this is page 40 of our packet of 145. It's sheet A25, Courtyard 2. If we could go to that. I can't quite tell, the trees they're coming out of some naturally landscaped area, and I'll tell you what when we go to that, I want to ask you if there's an opportunity for this to be some sort of a space for community events, small community events. Could be sustainability education, right here. Arts. Did you have that in mind at all?
Yeah.
Again, I can't see a lot of the detail here. It doesn't look like it's a surface that would allow people to congregate on top of it. Can you speak to
Yeah.
that at all?
I think, Mark, I'll start it, and then if I start getting above my pay grade, you let me know. But one of the things that we incorporate, if you see, it's very small, but there's a gentleman with a guitar over there, right? And it says public performance area, I think, on one of our floor plans that you have. So yeah, we envision it as a small place where we could have, whether it's a Q&A with someone or arts and lectures possibilities. Obviously there's a ton of great arts and community organizations in town. So I think the reason you probably understand is as we understand the parking situation, right, it'll limit those opportunities as we have planters and we work with staff. We have to be practical about how much floor space we have, to be candid. You guys know, I mean, might as well be transparent about it. It's that if we can't park the project, then we have nothing. And so we're willing to work with staff and obviously Scott and on the design and our design team to make whatever community spaces we can available. But there is a practical notion there that we don't want to be underparked.
Right. Well, rather than have me come back during comments to touch on this, if I could just leave you with a note that I'd be interested in you exploring this, because in many cities, even in our own, there have been, if not permanent, pop-up opportunities for musical interludes, especially artistic, and maybe they're not permanent and they're rotating and it's small and informal, but it creates part of that placemaking. Why would you go to this area of the funk zone as to somewhere else? Because you never know maybe what you're going to experience when you come into this space, art, music, who knows what. And so I think the funk zone lends itself to a kind of vibrancy, maybe unexpected compared to some other areas of city. So I'll continue on. Thank you for
and
that.
To that point, we are working in the interim as we work through the city planning process. We have, I don't know if you guys have heard of Mujeres Makers Market, but they're going to be hopefully hosting on our property in December. So I already personally, it's a hole. It's a fenced hole, right? So how do we activate that in the meanwhile as well? Something that our team is actually actively working on.
Okay, thank you. And then could we put back up the slide of the questions that staff and the applicant team would like us to touch on? That would be helpful for the remainder of my questions. Okay, I think I've heard enough about condominium map option versus lot split, lot tie. To the question of single management of 2 hotels, does the applicant team see any inherent benefits, one or the other? I'm not this is not my area of expertise. I think I've heard from some of you, maybe Mr. White and Mr. Timer, of course, the efficiencies of single management. Is there anything else that I might be missing in terms of weighing one over the other?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. Yeah, so it does really drive the economics of the project. So the reason, of course, why you don't see not one 6-unit hotel in the entire city of Santa Barbara is because it's just not feasible short of an Airbnb type of experience. So in order to have a hotel we need to have a hotel experience on this property, we need to have 12 units. And that demands one manager and not two managers. That demands, a housekeeping staff of X amount. So if we have to duplicate that twice, it makes it very cost prohibitive and impossible, in fact, to implement this project as it's envisioned. So it really comes down to these efficiencies. And ultimately, of course, the Timer family have run hotels throughout the course of their development career. And so the intent is we're not going to flag this as a Marriott, or this will be a locally owned hotel managed by the Timer Group. And so the ability to do that as one management entity is really critical to the success of the project.
Okay, thank you. I do have one last design question. I was looking at sheet A02 or A08 or A08, page 23 of 145. This is an elevation sheet, and this lower portion of the design. It looks like there are a number of kind of differing offset angled roof lines. And could you talk to me a little bit about the intentionality of that, and your objective with that?
Sure. So oops, we went to the wrong page there, jump back, there we go. So the idea with these gable roofs, you can see in this elevation, two gable roofs, the one in the foreground, which would be the lobby of the hotel. We're proposing to use a pre-manufactured, pre-engineered steel structure, and it's meant to be a reflection of all the gable roofs, corrugated metal on both the roof and the walls, very much like the corrugated buildings that are just to the west of us here. So that giving it kind of a nod to the industrial history of the funk zone. So that's what those two, kind of the gable roof forms. But then we're proposing to do a very kind of a modernist infill of glass in that as an idea to kind of bring it into the current century. The shed roofs that are on the right there, that's the current proposal for the roof line inside the hotel rooms. But as I mentioned earlier, if we may embark into an idea of mixing that up a little bit to have a couple of different ideas so that it has more of character of two separate hotels. We are proposing to use the concrete block and other kinds of wood siding, very similar to what we see throughout the funk zones. So the idea there is to we think this has a very much of a kind of a village character, where we were trying to really break down the massing into smaller bite-sized pieces. And that's kind of the direction. Does that answer your question, Chair Schwartz?
Yes, it just seems to create kind of a degree of excitement and just interest.
Yeah,
intrigue. It kind of draws. Again, I'm not a designer, as you know, but it kind of draws me in. Looking at it, it's a greater visual interest, and I didn't know what you were looking to reference. You've already discussed that in some of the neighboring buildings. Could be the history of some of the buildings that we've even lost in the funk zone with the redevelopment. Yeah.
And the artistic flair you can see is just it's showing the railing that's actually a garage entrance just to the right by where that above ground water cistern is. Thinking about a water etched steel and kind of an artistic texture. So we're trying to, I thank you for the compliment on the architecture, because we feel the same way that it is going to be. We're trying to create a lot of visual interest and intrigue, and kind of that people will really want to. It's always, as you know, an issue to try to get people up to the second floor for commercial space. And so the idea of having that stairwell and the kind of the architectural interest of the building, we're hoping is going to spur people's enthusiasm to further explore the project. That's really our goal.
Well, what struck me, and I was thinking as I've listened to some of the ABR and HLC hearings of projects that are closer in our core, more traditional, even in El Pueblo Viejo, a lot of discussion of separating, stepping back, differing the heights to break up an appearance of massing. And here in the funk zone, we have a different vibe. You know, it's a different style. And this to me seemed like you were perhaps looking to accomplish the same objective, just with a different architectural design than what I've heard HLC and ABR looking to accomplish more, for example, with a Spanish style design, or, you know, something more traditional, I'll say.
Certainly, we worked with both HLC and ABR for a long time, and we kind of know the underlying thinking. And so even though we haven't gone to before that board yet, it's precisely what we were thinking, is that, you know, everyone seems to like the kind of layer cake idea that the building steps back as it moves back from the sidewalk. Very much the exact opposite of what's happening directly across the street from this with the Beacons building. So yeah, we were, in developing this, we were thinking about, okay, what do we think that the ABR is going to like about this project? And that is that it is broken up. It really respects the corner. You know, most of the time on a corner lot like this, you would build the building right out to the corner. That's a very prime location for a commercial user. But instead, we gave it away to the public and to this whole placemaking idea, which we think that's one of the real strengths of the design. So we're looking forward to getting in front of the ABR and hearing what their thinking is. And I hope they agree with you.
And if I can say, Mark and Design Arc, we did a great job we designed this during COVID. So when we were thinking about this project, we knew outdoor space needed to be a premium, and that we wanted to invite people in. It's hard to get people to come to a second story, right? And so that's why hats off to the design team for creating something that's interesting, and we think invites people into this hub, you know, this community hub. So
yeah, okay. Those are my questions.
Don't give any more ideas. Don't give them too many ideas, right?
No, I know efficiency is, well, I initially, had a concern about what the nightly rate would be for these rooms. We've seen other new development go up, whether it's hotels or residential. And I'm very mindful now of trying to not layer on additional regulatory requirements that will drive up the overall cost of a project. And then as that gets passed down and through to whether it's hotel visitors or residential tenants. And so I'm sure you'll be keeping all of that in mind. So with that, it's almost 2:45. We usually then break at 3. Vice Chair Escobedo, did you have anybody else have more questions? We're going to take a brief break, like 5 minutes or so. More questions, Vice Chair Escobedo?
Just one. Mr. Kirkhart, would it be possible for you to share some examples or information about these transparent solar arrays? I'm really interested in them. It sounded
absolutely. We'll have you mean right now or when we come back?
No. Not now, after the meeting at some point. Just for us to
absolutely.
Take a look at.
I would be happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, to my colleagues, any more questions, follow-up questions? Because then we'll take, we'll take a 10-minute health break. We usually take it at right around 3, but we're running ahead of that. So I'll just wait a minute to see if anyone has more questions. Okay, very good. Why don't we come back at 5 of 3? I think that will give us a good health break, and we're in recess for 10 minutes. Thank you all. City of Santa Barbara Planning Commission meeting for October 14th, 2021. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to rejoin, whoever would like to go first with comments. Commissioner Higgins, and would it be helpful for us to have that very slide? Staff read my mind. Slide 38. Fantastic. Commissioner Higgins, your thoughts, please.
I'll give the straight answers here just to keep this organized, and then I might drift off into some color commentary here. So I do support the design with 2 small hotels. I liked the conversation that Commissioner Escobedo prompted with product architect about how to distinguish this hotels differently with design, with different areas on the property in terms of floor plans or room sizes. So I think that gets it done. I don't condo map option, if that works for staff and the MAP Act and the applicant, then that seems to be okay with me. I agree the lot tie is a little bit awkward, although I don't think I would object to it, and I'll get to that in a second. Single management of 2 hotels, I don't have any problem with that. Support parking modification. I like the fact that the parking is over the Title 28. And Commissioner Schwartz knows this about me. I don't think we should be using our resources, land, sticks and bricks, et cetera, for storage of vehicles, particularly in this area where we have lots of surface area parking anyway, and we can substantiate that there's alternative transportation methods that people are now using more frequently. So with that in mind, let me just get into the some color comments here about parking. I'll start here. And just with the design of the building, we don't frequently see projects that haven't been through the design review process. So it's very tempting to comment on that, but I'm going to try to stay in my lane, other than to say less parking here is less bulk height. And so I would support less parking in the form of it possibly being a win-win in terms of architectural compatibility. But that's as much as I'm going to say about that, because I want to leave that up to the good work of our design review folks. You know, Commissioner Schwartz mentioned or got into this part of town and this point in time we're in with regard to constraints and regulations. This is a heavily prescribed area in terms of zoning and development opportunities, heavily. Just as a reminder, we as a commission looked at essentially a zoning interpretation, almost a text amendment maybe a year or so ago in the HR2 zone with the group that wanted to sell or provide airplane related services and accommodations in the HR2 zone. And we kind of as a commission rallied around flexibility in this time of pandemic. And to me, I can extrapolate that here to be flexible with what's happening before us in terms of how heavily regulated this area is. Hasn't been developed or redeveloped in a long time for a number of good reasons. Most of which have to do with the heavily prescribed zoning regulations. So we don't really have a great background on why 6 is the number. So without great background on why we arrived at 6, it's easy for me to drift into more than 6, knowing also that there aren't any 6-unit hotels, and boutique to me really is 40 or less. So, but that's not what we're looking at here. 12 seems to be a really accommodating number based on the lot size and what else is being offered on the site too. So don't forget that the city is a partner on gross revenue here. So hotel rooms are a direct benefit into the general fund. I have recently stayed at a hotel in San Francisco called the Battery. And it is an 11 room hotel converted from another use, I imagine. But it was all the rooms were different. It did have one very small, shoebox size check-in area, but I believe it boasted 14 different bars, had 2 restaurants, roof deck, patio. It was more of a meeting space than a hotel, but it was really fun. And so I think smaller hotel, opportunities from a design standpoint are there. And it's going to be relatively easy, at least from where I'm coming from, maybe others, to have this thing look eclectic or different or separate, if you want to use that word, from a design standpoint. So I don't know that I'll be on the commission when it comes back, unless you go really fast. So, but I would look forward to this coming back, and I'll maybe look at it from the outside looking in next time. So thank you, Madam Chair. And just good congratulations to the design team for taking the time to really think of something thoughtful. So good job.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. I think Commissioner Wiscombe, did you put your webcam on next, or yes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, thank you very much. I think this project is really, really exciting, and it's going to be a model for the Funk Zone and all the changes that are happening in the Funk Zone on properties. We've had a couple other projects in the Funk Zone. And I just think it's an exciting project. There's a lot of thought that's gone into the amenities and features of the project that I think it will truly be a real gathering space. And I love the architecture, but we're not here to play with the architecture. So my assumption is that in 2004, when the Planning Commission conditioned the OC zone with a 6-room maximum small hotel with room sizes of 300 square feet maximum, that they were doing so to create less expensive accommodations in the coastal zone. That's the assumption I'm going to go on, and I don't think a property of this size should be penalized by having one 6-room hotel only, because it's such a large parcel, whereas a much smaller parcel could have a 6-room hotel, or this parcel could get divided into 4 parcels and have 4 6-room hotels. And I think that really defeats the purpose. So I'm going to make that assumption that that's why the Planning Commission did what they did. So the applicant has confirmed the room size of a maximum of 300 square feet. And so I can definitely support 2 small hotels on this particular property with the condominium map option. I don't really support the lot split, lot tie option. I think, as staff says, it kind of defeats the purpose of the lot split. So I'm not going to agree with that, but and I appreciated Vice Chair Escobedo's questioning about you could distinguish one 6-room from another one. You can do that with architecture, you can do that with color, you can do that with names. There's a lot of ways to do that. So I'm not, I don't have a problem with that. I do support single management of 2 hotels. I'm not sure why that question is there, but, and I also want to say that in the 2 small hotels, I really support shared features such as elevators and back of house services. I don't think that we should take up space on a development like this that's as exciting as this with 2 back of the house spaces and 2 different elevators. It just adds expense to the project and just takes away from the amenities that are being offered to the public and to visitors here on the site. So on to the parking modification. I do support a parking modification, but I am concerned about, in the staff report, it talks about the outdoor seating plan. Perhaps the seating in that plan is lean. And I think that as staff gets into the development review, they will look at that and hopefully correct that. If there's, to make sure that there is adequate parking for the number of potential seats in that space. And further to that, let's see, transportation planning staff reviewed the parking study done for the site. And if transportation planning is comfortable with the number of parking spaces that are being offered, I don't think that this site should be penalized for being still under Title 28, and Title 30 has fewer parking spaces. So as long as we have, and I think we were told at the site review that they're overparked for Title 30 and obviously underparked for Title 28, that's an important consideration. And I would just emphasize that when this project comes back to us, I would be in support of a parking modification as long as it's been fully vetted by staff for both the outdoor seating plan and anything else that develops during the project. And other than that, I appreciate the applicant's thorough answers to the questions. I appreciate the sustainability aspects of the project. I think those are going to be very important when it comes back, and they're also very exciting. The only comment I'll make is for the conditional use permits for a small hotel, staff had asked us, would we be able to support the findings that need to be made? And obviously, finding number 6 for a small hotel states that the site has sufficient area for a small hotel. Well, it has sufficient area for 2 small hotels as far as I'm concerned. And then there's one about the CUP finding number 7, that the small hotel has adequate parking. I've already discussed that when it comes back to us, I'm sure it will. And then under the CUP finding number 8, it lists landscaping appearance compatible with the character of the area. And I think, the funk zone is in transition. this is going to be a major project in the Funk Zone. And I looked at the drawings, and I also looked at the stats provided in our report, which is on page 7 of 145. Landscaping was 5% of the project for lot coverage. And I do think that's probably insufficient. So I would like to see that developed more, more landscaping and more thought put into landscaping. I realize this is just the concept phase. So those are my comments, and thank you to the applicant team and my fellow commissioners for your very thoughtful questions. I thought Commissioner Bonderson's questions about where alternative parking sites are, if this project, if the lot here is full, I thought that was a really good question, and I was very satisfied and pleased with the answer on that too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? I don't recall. Vice Chair Escobedo, I think you were next up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am really excited about this project, and I even held a little focus group of Funk Zone frequenters who happen to be friends, and they're really excited about it too, so that's a good sign. I will do similar to Commissioner Hagan.
I think I got
I will
left
go
out of
through
that party.
You did. I didn't want to sway you before the meeting. I'm going to go through these questions and then I'll add some comments. So can I support the design with 2 small hotels? Absolutely. I prefer the condominium. Actually, I will only support the condominium map option. The only request, and I made it earlier, is please make the 2 hotels. I know 6 is an arbitrary number, but it is the number that we have to work with. And so if you could make them distinct by design, or as Commissioner Wiscombe mentioned, signs, there's all kinds of ways to do it. Just get me to a yes, please. The next is I can support single management of 2 hotels. I'm definitely in favor of trying to be as efficient as possible so that something like this comes to fruition. I also support the parking modification and can support less parking in the future if this comes back and I'm still on the commission. Let's see. I think those are all the questions, even in the staff report. The staff report was really good. I also want to say to staff, I love this section, questions for the commission. That really helps focus my comments and my questions today as I was preparing. So when possible, please include that in future staff reports. I really like the idea of, I know this is conceptual, but a bodega. I think as we start, particularly, I hope that we include this in projects in downtown. As we incorporate more housing downtown, and if we see housing in the Funk Zone, it's going to be important to have a place close by where you can walk and get some groceries. It's obviously not a full grocery store, and this shouldn't be a liquor store. It should be something like a bodega where you can go in and get groceries. I think that's going to be really important. Really, really impressed with design as it relates to gathering spaces. I do agree with much of what Chair Schwartz shared about it is a very intriguing, interesting, inviting project. Obviously, there's a lot of design work to be done with ABR, but I'm really, really excited about this. And no surprise, but really excited about the sustainability component and really going for it. And I'm going to hold, if I'm still on the Planning Commission, I'm going to hold you to it, to not fall on minimum standards and really be an example for other projects on how you can design sustainably and make it really, really interesting. I also want to say that I think that there's a way to also, there's an intersection that can be made on this project between art and sustainability, and highlighting the fact that this is going to be such a forward-thinking project that maybe the art can highlight that and complement that. If the subterranean parking does present an issue after doing some analysis with sea level rise and flooding, like I said, I could do with less parking. I think this project is really exciting and I really want to see it. So those are my comments, Madam Chair. If I left anything out, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Escobedo. Commissioner Lodge, comments, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. When I saw that this property was coming before the Planning Commission with a new project, I just assumed it was going to be mixed use, but mixed use with commercial and residential. And after all, we had reviewed 121 East Mason, which is 3 floors of residential and 1 of commercial. So it was a big disappointment to discover that this area could not, that the ordinance in this area south of the railroad track would not allow residential. I think that's most unfortunate. When I looked at the plans, what did I see? Lots of low-wage jobs. Where are these people going to live? Some of you will remember 2 years ago, we had before us a hotel project on West Montecito Street. And at the time, I checked with, there were a number of projects coming through for new hotel rooms. And I checked with Visit Santa Barbara, the organization representing the hotels. And what was in the pipeline would mean an 18% increase in hotel rooms in Santa Barbara. And the preceding 2 years had seen a decline in vacancy rates. So the city clearly didn't need more hotel rooms. And I suspect it's still the case now, while we do need housing. Well, I'm expressing my disappointment with our inability to have what the city needs. And I think, given that it's what the owner is allowed to do with the property, it's an interesting project. I like the steps and making that a possible place where people will gather. There was another thing I wanted to mention, and this is sort of, Commissioner Wiscombe asked about sea level rise, and Mr. Kirkhart responded in terms of seasonal flooding. One of these days, the city is going to have to really, do we wait until, the water's already, the ocean's already there covering the streets? We can't do that. And I don't know what the answer is to that. It's more like a rhetorical question, but it is something that is definitely going to be an issue that the city will have to deal with. But on the questions, I can support the design of 2 small hotels. It doesn't make a great deal of sense that, that a lot this large could only have the 6 units. And anyway, it's a way to get around what the ordinance says. And I go for the condominium map option. I support the single management of 2 hotels and support the parking modification, especially since under Title 30, it is overparked. Having stopped going to the funk zone unless it's mid-afternoon because of the parking situation, I wonder, but I can go along with that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. Commissioner Bonderson, are you ready for comments?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. So I feel very personally excited about seeing a project like this architecturally. I love the Spanish stairs kind of grand entrance that is very inviting from all kind of directions. I loved how they chose the corner to kind of bring people in and to provide a whole new experience into the funk zone. Now, I know we're not here to provide too much design feedback, but I do want to express my pleasure to see a project of this type. That being said, I actually am I didn't do it on purpose, but I ended up being last here, almost last. And to be able to follow Commissioner Lodge is an advantage today, because I feel very strongly with what she expressed about the fact that there are a lot of hotel rooms in our community and not enough housing. That's something that I felt very strongly about years before I joined the Planning Commission, and I feel like we don't often have the opportunity to express that. This is a very, very important type of project in a zone that is limiting the ability for housing on this side of the railroad track. And so I really want to reiterate what she just said. I hope it wasn't lost on anyone, but she's spot on. Now, that being said, I'm also happy to see that there's condominium options here, home ownership, and that they have spent a lot of energy explaining and expressing a format that allows individual ownership, that the different pieces of this property can be owned by different members of the community for different reasons. And to me, that is a very positive thing. I don't know how common it is, or if it's special in any way, but the fact that they're really emphasizing it, I think is a very positive thing. To follow this list, I support the design of 2 small hotels. And I agree that single management would be a very cost-efficient way of handling that. So option 1 is certainly a better option. I'm glad we were able to discuss that and work our way through it, since it's the option that staff can support. And I agree with the condominium map version as everyone else has ultimately expressed. And with regard to the parking modification, I'm kind of teetering in both directions here. I agree that the fact that we have several public parking facilities around this neighborhood, this area, is in our favor. If there's ever a lack of parking on this property, people don't have to walk very far. However, I also agree with Commissioner Lodge. It is not always the most welcoming place to go if somebody has any type of access issue. And I don't mean that that's what Commissioner Lodge was mentioning, but she did bring up that it's not always the, some place that she looks forward to going to unless it's mid-afternoon, and parking is easy. Parking is not always easy in downtown, and it's not normally that easy in the Funk Zone. And I think that needs to be recognized here as well. With regard to having to walk a short distance, that is not always something that everyone can do. And I want to just make my point here that even though the city of Santa Barbara has code requirements for ADA, disabled parking, parking for the disabled, I always, you've heard me say it before, I always like to make a plea with the applicant that if they can add some additional handicap parking spots to their property to accommodate the needs of people who may not be able to walk a certain additional distance. And even if those spots sit empty some of the time, it's so important to have those spots available to those who need it, so that the projects are not excluding anyone, that somebody doesn't have to drive there and then turn around and drive home. That's really important to me. So I think that sums up the questions that are presented before us. And I just want to say that I'm very excited about a project like this. I'm looking forward to seeing it again, and how it's going to be developed the next time we see it. So best of luck to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonderson. I'll come back to Commissioner Higgins or Vice Chair Escobedo if you have. Do you have any follow-on comments before I go, Commissioner Higgins?
No, I just wasn't sure what our protocol was to have our cameras on during everybody's comment or whatever, but go ahead.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Let me go right through these questions, and then I'll provide some supplemental comments. I will be supporting the design of 2 small hotels. However, I think it's vital that through creative design, in the various ways that have already been mentioned, that there be differentiators between them. And there are so many options, and not for me to try to provide thoughts, provide inspiration. But I've stayed in some of these types of places that have different themed rooms, the amenities, the design, the interiors. So inside, outside, there are all kinds of options, even cost effectively. So I suggest we encourage the applicant to do that. I will only be supporting the condominium map option, so there's a yes to that. And not only do I support the single management of 2 hotels, I think it's essential. It just wouldn't even make sense to me to try to split those out. And again, I think to the extent that we can assist and support the applicant to make this the most cost effective while beautiful, in a funk zone way, exciting, stimulating, role modeling project is important. And so part of all of that means cost efficiency, cost effectiveness. And I think that can only be achieved through a single management of the 2 hotels. Yes, I'll be supporting parking modification. And that leads me to encourage the applicant as they move through the process of trying to find ways, both in the built aspect, the built environment aspect of the project, but also offering means of coming and going, transportation, parking of bicycles, whether people come up by train for the day and enjoy the funk zone, including this property. Really be creative in figuring out how to try to encourage and make it easy for people to participate on this property, stay on the property without needing an automobile. I think we really need to press ourselves in that strategic way and creative way. Now I want to go to the current proposed mix of uses. And I think that what we have before us, at least in concept design, and I'm looking at, I think this would be figure 2, the second floor site plan. The diversity of offerings, of amenities are very important in my mind to not only stimulate people getting up to the second floor, as Mr. Kirkhart mentioned, and this can be quite a challenge with multi-floor commercial properties, but also entice and excite those with differing kinds of experiences, locals and visitors. One of the intriguing new experiences I've had over these last months, this year, is to be in the funk zone more often, and specifically to experience the beer garden. And when I've asked various visitors to the beer garden or patrons of the beer garden where they're from, it has surprised me that midweek we have a fair mix of locals and visitors from Oxnard, Ventura, Thousand Oaks, coming up here just to experience Santa Barbara for the day. And I wasn't aware that that's going on midweek. You know, this is not being my area of professional expertise, but it was a surprise. So that tells me, and I've thought for some time, if we make Santa Barbara, throughout Santa Barbara, as enticing experientially and otherwise to locals, it will automatically attract visitors. And I think this is an important project to keep all of that in mind. And I want to say back to the sustainability design aspect of this, to encourage the applicant to incorporate as much of the sustainability design, the cutting edge sustainability design that Mr. Kirkhart mentioned on the exterior, fold it, bring it into the overall architectural design and make them elements of intrigue and education and supporting of other new projects that could take the risk in doing that. I think this project could lead the way. let me see if there are any other overarching points that some of my colleagues might have touched on as well. I want to mention the overall design, just looking at some of the exhibits we have before us. I don't know if Bubbles, I see Bubbles on sheet A22. I don't know if Bubbles is a real establishment or not, or a placeholder as part of the placemaking, Mr. Kirkhart. But in all seriousness, I think that the varying elevations and materials in general that are being brought forward in this concept are perfect for the funk zone. This is exactly what I've been hoping to see for some time. Since I'm in my last year on the Planning Commission, it's really heartwarming for me in my last year to see this kind of project coming forward, and when it will return to a different Planning Commission for detailed review. Everything from the elevations, the differing intriguing roof lines, and I'm sorry, I'm looking down because I'm looking at the design slide myself. I think that it references back to the heart of what makes the funk zone funky, which, you know, we've been losing over time. There's a light industrial feel that's always been in the funk zone, and to bring that fully forward in this very creative way, I think serves the funk zone well, serves the redevelopment objective well. So that's it for me. Do any of my colleagues have any other closing comments before we come back to staff and the applicant to make sure that they have everything they need today? I don't know if Mr. Busk or Ms. Kennedy, you would like to just do a check with us to make sure that we've provided you enough feedback in the categories that you were looking for, and that the applicant will need as well as they move forward.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say thank you. I think all of you have provided some very good comments and direction for this project. It's appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks for your excellent work, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Kirkhart and Mr. White?
I would say also thank you very much for the commentary. It's obviously it's music to our ears to hear that generally your commission is supportive of the direction that we're headed. So once again, thank you very much for the comments. I think we got what we needed.
Mr. White?
Thank you for the comments. Really, really appreciated. Obviously, we put a lot of effort into this concept, and we appreciate that the Planning Commission embraces the concept. So thank you.
Mr. Timer?
I also want to say thank you for all the feedback and for the staff work on this project. We know we're a long way out, but we're going to try to hustle and get something back in for staff to look at as soon as possible. And we share the vision and what the funk zone can be and what Santa Barbara in the future can be, and through these kind of smart development projects and so we look forward to being an example, and you can hold us to it. Commissioner who was speaking about the sustainability, because we won't be at the minimum. I can tell you that right now. You can quote me on it. It's been something that's been important to me for my whole life, growing up and seeing it happen in front of us. And you know, we have to build stuff, but there's ways to build it better, I think. So I'm excited to try to make you all proud, and I think our team is too.
Okay, well, don't say a long way off. That you were going in the right direction, and I was feeling really optimistic. So I want to, you know, see it move very, very expeditiously through the appropriate review bodies, and hoping the best for that. Very good. Thank you all. And it looks like staff. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you
and it
very
looks
much.
like. Thank you. And it looks like staff has enough information as well to continue on working with the applicant. So that's it. This was a comment portion for the concept review. No action needed. So now we're going to come back to our agenda. And we're going to wrap up with our administrative agenda. And this is our committee and liaison report time. Does anyone have anything to report? Commissioner Higgins.
Just that there were no show hearings in the last couple of weeks. So
Okay, all quiet on that front. Any other committee and liaison reports? Commissioner Bonderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This isn't a report, it's just a reminder. If anyone may be interested in the State Street Advisory Committee, we will be having our next advisory meeting on Monday, this coming week, the 18th of October at 4 p.m. And the agenda and video link can be found on the website.
Very good. Thanks for your participation in that very important liaison role. Any other liaison reports? Okay, I think that's it then for our reports. And you already heard from Ms. DeBusk at the outset of our hearing that the October 21st hearing of the Planning Commission has been canceled. However, we have a special hearing now scheduled for October 28th. And as you can see on the city website, that's going to be zoning ordinance amendment consideration in conjunction with the enactment of the new Senate Bill 9. That will start at 1 o'clock, as all our hearings do. Very good. Thanks to one and all. Please stay safe, stay well, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Go Dodgers.